I was the one delivering those deadly medications.
How many patients have you helped to their death?
Possibly 30 to 40 patients.
In the summer of 1988, Livingston, New Jersey became the stage for a chilling series of events. John Yango, a 72-year-old retired judge, lay recovering in St. Barnabas Medical Center. His prognosis was good until a seemingly routine medication administration changed everything. A male nurse entered Yango's room, injecting a syringe of fluid into his IV. Within hours, Yango's condition deteriorated rapidly. By day's end, he was dead. This wasn't a tragic accident. The nurse, Charles Cullen, watched from afar as his colleagues frantically tended to the dying judge. He felt a surge of power, knowing he had orchestrated this demise. We trust healthcare workers implicitly. When a nurse enters our room, we don't question their actions. But Charles Cullen betrayed that trust in the most horrifying way possible. Cullen was an angel of death, a healthcare worker who derived pleasure from ending lives. Yango was his first victim, but far from his last. Over his 16-year nursing career, investigators believe Cullen may have murdered up to 400 patients. How did one of America's most prolific serial killers hide in plain sight for so long? How many lives were cut short by the very hands meant to heal them? This is the dark tale of Charles Cullen, a killer disguised as a caregiver whose weapon of choice was medicine itself. Born in 1960 into an Irish Catholic family in West Orange, New Jersey, Charles Cullen's early life was marked by loss rather than abuse. The youngest of 7 siblings, Charles lost his father when he was just 7 months old, leaving his mother to raise 8 children alone. Struggling financially, their mother worked part-time as a seamstress, often absent from home. One incident stands out as a chilling precursor to Cullen's future crimes. When his sister's abusive boyfriend visited, young Charles attempted to poison him by adding lighter fluid to his drink. This act, disturbing in itself, foreshadowed Cullen's later method of killing, using lethal fluids. This early experience with attempted poisoning seems to have awakened a dark fascination in Cullen. At just 9 years old, Charles Cullen's fascination with lethal chemicals took a disturbing turn. After finding a chemistry set in a church charity box, he mixed its contents into a glass of milk and drank it, attempting suicide. The chemicals weren't potent enough to kill him, but they left him severely ill. This early brush with self-harm revealed the depths of Charles's unhappiness. Growing up fatherless and poor and disconnected from his siblings, he felt overwhelmed by life's circumstances. His mother was his sole emotional anchor, but even this relationship was cruelly cut short. As a teenager, Charles received a cryptic call while skipping school. "Your mother was in a car accident. You should come to the hospital." Rushing to the hospital, Charles was blindsided by devastating news. His mother had died instantly in a head-on collision. Her body was already gone. Grief turned to rage. Why hadn't they told him the truth on the phone? Charles's resentment towards the healthcare system, born from his mother's death, would fester for years. This bitterness likely fueled his future targeting of hospital patients. Plunging into depression after his mother's death, Charles attempted suicide again, landing him in psychiatric care. But therapy offered little solace. He dropped out of high school, directionless. Seeking structure, Charles joined the Navy as an electronics technician, but military life only deepened his struggles. He developed an alcohol addiction and made another suicide attempt while on duty. Desperate for purpose, Charles considered a career change. Ironically, he chose nursing. In 1984, he enrolled in nursing school at the very hospital where his mother had died years before. For the first time, Charles felt optimistic. As the only male in his class, he excelled academically. To fund his education, he worked odd jobs, shoveling meat, selling donuts, refilling condiments, and mopping floors. Charles thrived in the demanding world of nursing. His only missing piece was a romantic partner. Enter Adrienne, his manager at a side job. Educated and ambitious, she caught Charles's eye immediately. Their courtship was swift and intense. Charles showered Adrienne with attention and gifts, presenting himself as the perfect gentleman. Within 6 months, they were engaged. They married immediately after Charles's nursing school graduation, honeymooning at Niagara Falls. Fresh from his honeymoon, Charles began working in the burn unit at St. Barnabas Medical Center in Livingston, New Jersey. His impressive resume, top of his class, and a respected veteran made him an ideal candidate. Charles quickly became a model employee. Perfect attendance, early arrivals, and an immaculate uniform made him stand out. His personal life seemed equally perfect. In October 1987, the couple bought a small home in suburban Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania, where Adrienne started a new job as a computer programmer. The couple's conflicting schedules strained their marriage. Adrienne worked days, and Charles worked long nights. Their time together dwindled to brief hellos between shifts. Charles reverted to his old drinking habits, consuming anything with alcohol, wine, cocktails, even Listerine, in desperate moments. When Adrienne became pregnant in February 1988, Charles grew increasingly cold and distant. After their daughter's birth, Charles briefly showered the baby with affection, neglecting Adrienne entirely, but his enthusiasm for fatherhood quickly faded, mirroring a pattern in his life: intense initial excitement followed by rapid disinterest. This pattern manifested disturbingly when their new puppy vanished. Charles claimed it ran away while he walked, leaving their baby home alone. Adrienne was alarmed by his carelessness. More red flags emerged. Adrienne suspected Charles drugged their daughter with cold medicine to avoid childcare duties. When confronted, he vehemently denied it, shutting down any discussion. Adrienne's intuition screamed that something was deeply wrong. Despite friends urging her to work on the marriage, Charles's behavior only worsened. He retreated to the basement, Adrienne's forbidden zone, drinking in isolation, growing ever more distant from his family. Feeling married to a stranger, Adrienne focused on work and raising Shauna, but her unease about Charles intensified. Weeks later, a distraught neighbor arrived at their door. Their beagle, Queenie, a frequent visitor to the Cullen's yard, had been found poisoned to death in the nearby alley. Adrienne was stunned into silence. As the neighbor left, a chilling realization washed over Adrienne. Memories flooded back: their missing puppy, Charles allegedly drugging their daughter, his childhood attempt to poison his sister's boyfriend. A horrifying pattern emerged. Was Charles responsible for Queenie's death? Had he harmed their own puppy? What other dark secrets might he be hiding? Adrienne's world tilted on its axis. The man she married, the father of her child, suddenly seemed capable of unspeakable acts. Charles's first murder of Judge John Yango marked a chilling turning point. Feeling powerless in his crumbling marriage, he sought control by injecting stolen medication into a helpless patient. The rush of excitement was unlike anything he'd experienced before. Yango's unexpected death triggered a toxicology report, revealing alarming insulin levels. Doctors were baffled. Why would an allergy patient receive insulin? This death, however, was just the beginning. On February 11th, 1991, nurse Pam Allen discovered a suspicious IV bag at St. Barnabas. Tests revealed it contained lethal amounts of insulin alongside the expected heparin and saline. 3 days later, patient Anna Byers was put on a heparin drip. Within 30 minutes, she exhibited severe symptoms: shaking, confusion, and weakness. Her insulin levels skyrocketed inexplicably. Doctors frantically attempted to save her, first with orange juice, then with a dextrose injection, but Anna continued to crash. Anna Byers' ordeal took a terrifying turn. Doctors unplugged her drip, stabilizing her insulin levels, but when she reconnected, she crashed again. Only after being rushed to the ICU and disconnected did she improve. Shockingly, Fred Belth, another patient, experienced the same nightmare. Both IVs tested positive for insulin. Microscopic analysis revealed multiple deliberate needle punctures in the bags. Neither patient had ever been prescribed insulin. This left two chilling possibilities: a catastrophic double mistake or intentional harm. Both scenarios spelled disaster for the hospital. The investigation narrowed to hospital staff, a chilling revelation. Analyzing schedules against patient crashes, 3 nurses emerged as suspects. The 2 cooperated fully. Charles Cohen stood out as aggressive and dismissive. When confronted, Charles brazenly claimed he was too busy saving lives to answer questions. His defiant response, "You can't prove anything," spoke volumes. The team escalated efforts, installing CCTV in the medical storage room, but Charles, aware he was under scrutiny, outmaneuvered them. He left St. Barnabas, finding new employment at St. Luke's Warren Hospital in New Jersey. Shockingly, law enforcement failed to intervene effectively. Despite the hospital's evidence, authorities claimed insufficient proof for a case. They demanded fingerprints or video footage, evidence that simply didn't exist. The air of suspicion lingered, even as Charles Cullen moved on to Warren Hospital. His new workplace was blissfully unaware of the darkness that followed him. For a brief moment, life seemed to improve. The new job invigorated Charles, offering better pay and a shorter commute. The novelty he craved breathed temporary life into his failing marriage with Adrienne. But the respite was short-lived. After their second daughter's birth in December 1991, Charles spiraled into a pit of alcohol and despair. He adamantly denied any problem, refusing help or medication. Adrienne watched helplessly as her husband sank deeper into his self-destructive cycle. By November 1992, Adrienne had reached her breaking point. Fear for her children's safety kept her silent, confiding only in her lawyer about her plans for divorce. A chilling dilemma arose. Adrienne needed gallbladder surgery at Charles's hospital. The thought filled her with dread. She refused to enter without divorce papers in hand, terrified of Charles having any control over her unconscious body. Her words hung in the air, heavy with foreboding. If Charlie's working, something might happen to me. The hospital stay became a battleground of suspicion. Adrienne, armed with divorce papers and her father as sentinel, fortified herself against Charles's presence. Charles's world shattered. The divorce papers, delivered in front of his colleagues, sparked a familiar, deadly pattern. Stress in Charles's life often heralded death for his patients. On September 1st, 1993, 91-year-old Helen Dean lay recovering from breast cancer surgery, ready for discharge. Her son, Larry, sat vigil, unaware of the approaching darkness. A male nurse entered, his presence jarring. Dressed entirely in white, he stood out like a specter among the blue-clad staff. Without meeting Larry's eyes, he ordered him out. 10 minutes later, Larry returned to find his mother agitated. "He stuck me," she insisted, pointing to her inner thigh. A tiny red dot, visible only through Larry's magnifying lens, confirmed her words. Helen Dean's sudden decline raised alarm bells. Within 24 hours of the mysterious injection, she was dead. Her son, Larry, driven by suspicion, launched his own investigation. The oncologist confirmed that no injections were scheduled. The pieces didn't fit. Larry's quest for answers led him to a name: Charles Cullen. The Warren County Prosecutor's Office mobilized. Charles faced questioning from lawyers, supervisors, and Helen's doctor. He passed a polygraph and denied everything. His locker was searched and Helen's injection site was tested, but a crucial oversight sealed her fate. They never checked for digoxin. Charles had switched his weapon of choice. Digoxin replaced insulin, which was harder to detect. The hospital, suspecting Charles but fearing scandal, chose silence. They placed him on indefinite paid leave, washing their hands of the problem. Once again, Charles slipped through the cracks. No proper investigation meant a clean record, allowing him to secure a position at Hunterdon Hospital's ICU. By October 1995, Charles began dating Kathy, a nurse with 3 kids and an unhappy marriage. Charles's world soon crumbled as Kathy returned to her husband. Alone and bitter, he turned his dark attention to Jesse Eakin, another patient meant to recover. Digoxin claimed another victim. Nurse Marjorie Whalen's suspicions grew. She confronted Charles about administering unprescribed drugs. One more incident, she warned, and he'd be fired. Charles, unfazed, simply resigned. His arrogance swelled with each escape. Hospital hopping should have raised alarms, but desperation at Morristown Memorial Hospital blinded them to the danger. They hired him, oblivious to the predator in their midst. This time, Charles's facade cracked. Patients lay neglected. Rooms were filthy. The wrong medications flowed freely. In less than a year, poor performance, not suspicion, led to his firing. Unbeknownst to them, several patients had fallen victim to his lethal touch. Unemployed and spiraling, Charles faced mounting debts. Nearly $70,000 in the red, he struggled with alimony and child support. His reputation preceded him, closing doors across New Jersey. Charles fled to Pennsylvania, exploiting a loophole in licensing to start a new Health Force, a staffing agency, placed him at Liberty Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. Red flags waved, a seasoned nurse taking a pay cut driving further, yet desperation blinded both parties. Bankruptcy loomed over Charles, a harbinger of death for his patients. On May 6, 1998, Francis Henry became his next target. Disagreeing with Henry's care plan, Charles took matters into his own hands. A massive insulin dose sent Henry into seizures, diabetic shock, and finally, a coma. Liberty. Nursing's investigation revealed the insulin overdose, but faltered at the crucial moment. Instead of confronting Charles, they fired senior nurse Kimberly Pepe. No criminal investigation followed. 5 months later, Charles struck again. Caught entering an elderly woman's room with syringes, he met resistance. The struggle left her with a broken wrist. Charles was fired for a protocol breach, but the cycle continued. Charles Cullen's restless search for new hunting grounds led him to St. Luke's Hospital in Fountain Hill, Pennsylvania. His deadly pattern seemed poised to continue unchecked. But on June 21, 2001, a chance discovery threatened to unravel his carefully woven web of deception. Nurse Kim Wolf, entering the medical storage room for a routine task, noticed something amiss with the sharps container. The usual clinking sound of discarded needles was absent. Peering inside, Kim found the container unusually full, packed with white cardboard boxes. Alarmed, she enlisted veteran nurses Gary Kimball and Candy Walmart. Together, they called Hazmat to unlock the mysterious container. The contents shocked them. 40 boxes of Pronstol, a heart medication that had been vanishing from their supplies for months. Unlike addictive painkillers, heart medications rarely disappeared. More troubling still, not a single patient on their floor needed Pronstol. Suspicion mounting, the nurses initiated a covert stakeout of the medical storage room. At 6:20 p.m., Charles Cullen arrived for his shift. After his usual reorganization of the nursing station, he entered the storage room, lingering for 5 ominous minutes. Kim Wolf, a colleague who likes Charles, discovers several white boxes in the Sharps box. Shocked, she realizes Charlie is the medicine thief. Kim alerts the ICU floor manager, but it's too late. The stolen vials were already administered to Edward O'Toole, who died shortly after. Charles's actions were partly driven by his brother's recent death from brain cancer. The hospital contacts their attorney, and Charles denies everything, blaming lack of sleep and claiming he took the medication at another nurse's request. They offer him a neutral reference if he resigns, a pattern of evasion that allowed Charles to continue his deadly spree. At Somerset, Charles befriends nurse Amy Loren. Despite his attraction, they remain friends. When Amy takes leave for an undiagnosed heart issue, Charles is left alone on night shifts, where his killing escalates. The murders began in January 2002 with Eleanor Soker's digoxin overdose. On his 43rd birthday, he kills Giacomino Toto and Joyce Mancini with Pavolian. His spree continues with John Shanager on March 11th, Dorothea Hoagland on April 6th, and Melvin Simcoe on May 5th. Charles's methods became increasingly reckless. On May 15, 2002, he executed 21-year-old Michael Strenko with digoxin. Callously, Charles explains Michael's death to his grieving parents, displaying a shocking lack of compassion. A month later, Charles tries to kill Mrs. Ginhan with digoxin, but her physician intervenes, and she survives due to prompt treatment. The day before, Reverend Florian Gall was hospitalized with a bacterial infection, but was expected to recover. Charles Cullen ensured that didn't happen. Reverend Gall died on June 28th from cardiac arrest with elevated digoxin levels in his blood. Charles had already murdered over 8 patients at Somerset Medical Center, though only 4 deaths raised suspicion. On July 14, 2003, nurse Raymond J. Fleming was briefed by Mary Lund and met with Charles Cullen, aware of his dubious past at other hospitals. Charles had ordered and quickly canceled a digoxin syringe for Reverend Gall, raising further suspicion. During questioning, Charles thought about his recent victims, James Strickland and Krishnakant Upadhyay. Detectives Tim Braun and Danny Baldwin discovered suspicious deaths linked to Charles at Somerset and other hospitals in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. They compiled a timeline and found incident reports dating back to 1993 at St. Barnabas Hospital. Reports included failing to sign out drugs, withholding medication, and shutting down patients' respiratory vents. As the investigation progressed, Charles tried to avoid suspicion. On October 21, 2003, he gave Edward Zizek Xanax. Despite his vow to avoid digoxin, Edward died from a digoxin overdose, though no record showed it was taken. The investigators, convinced of Charles's guilt, planned to use his friend Amy against him. They revealed to Amy the evidence against Charles, showing a pattern of patient deaths following his administration of medication. Initially disbelieving, Amy was shown the paperwork linking Charles to numerous overdoses. She then recalled how Charles often helped with drug deliveries, likely stealing drugs unnoticed. Amy was shocked, but agreed to help the investigators. On December 12, 2003, she met Charles at a bar wearing a wire. As they talked over Coronas, Charles admitted how patients had died from tampered IV bags. Amy softly confronted him. "I'm here because I know you killed those people." Charles slumped, acknowledging the accusation, and left the bar, where officers arrested him for Reverend Gall's murder. At the prosecutor's office, Charles initially denied the killings. Confronted with evidence, he broke down, confessing to 30 to 40 murders. Though investigators believed the number was closer to 400, Charles claimed he killed to end patient suffering, but his pattern suggested he murdered during stressful times, often targeting those expected to recover. His motives were not mercy, but control and power. In exchange for his confession, the death penalty was taken off the table. Charles pleaded guilty, avoiding a trial. At his sentencing, the courtroom was filled with victims' families. Charles kept his head down as they read their impact statements. He was sentenced to 18 life terms for 29 murders and 3 attempted murders. Years later, in a 60-minute interview, Charles spoke openly about his crimes. His case highlighted flaws in the medical industry, leading to the 2005 Nurse-Cullen Act, requiring healthcare workers to report incompetency and undergo background checks. The case made Americans question their trust in healthcare workers. Charles Cullen sits in a New Jersey state prison, paying for his crimes. His story is a chilling reminder of the betrayal and loss he caused. The Nurse-Cullen Act was a positive outcome, mandating better oversight in healthcare. The Charles Cullen case reminds us that evil can hide in plain sight. Stay vigilant and stay safe. If you're intrigued by true crime mysteries, join our community of secret sleuths. Hit subscribe and the notification bell to never miss a case.